On the 20th of April 1888, a baby was born. And like many families, his believed this baby would one day become a great man, an honest, loyal and selfless man who would come to do great things for others and his country. However, this baby would go down in history as one of the most infamous figures in worldwide history, but at this time, no one could tell at all. Contrary to popular belief, Adolf Hitler was not born in Germany, but in the Austro-Hungarian Empire in the small town of Braunau am Inn. He grew up in and around the Austrian city of Linz. Adolf and his sister Paula were the only two out of 5 remaining children of their mother Clara Hitler and father Alois Hitler. Adolf was heavily spoiled by his mother as a child, whereas his father was a strict and cold man who often beat Adolf as a consistently telling off. Alois wanted his son Adolf to seek a career in the civil service, just as he had done. However, Adolf had become so distant from his father that he was repulsed by his wishes and rules. He sneered at the thought of a lifetime spent enforcing petty regulations. His father tried to browbeat his son into obedience. Like many rebellious children, Adolf did his best to oppose whatever his father wanted. Adolf Hitler was oftenly reported unhappy at school, appearing to be a shy, moody and lonely child, failing to excel in any classes other than arts and PE. Many of Hitler's admirers, when he came to power later in his life, believed that he had been a natural-born leader within his school. However, this was the exact opposite. In fact, he was prone to daydream alone rather than play games with friends. School failed to interest Hitler, with many reports describing him as lazy, disobedient and rude. He left school at 16, with no qualifications. Despite his arrogant and intolerable behaviour, Hitler became fascinated by the Roman Catholic Church and enlisted as a choir boy. He was impressed by the church's beautiful buildings and architecture, as well as the fine uniformed robes and the music used in religious services. After leaving school, Hitler refused to get a job and was able to live off his mother's pension. He hated the idea of regular work, passing the days by sketching and painting, hoping for one day to become a famous artist. In 1907, Hitler moved to the Austrian capital, Vienna, applying twice to enter the Academy of Fine Arts, twice of which were turned down, due to his pictures being not up to their standards. A professor at the academy advised him to try a career in architecture. However, due to Hitler's lack of qualifications, he was turned down from this course as well. But Hitler did not give up. Still dreaming of a great future, he drew up plans and drawings to rebuild his childhood city of Linz and turn it into a capital for a great empire. Yet, with no steady income within Vienna, Hitler sank into poverty. But going back to Linz would mean that he was a failure and he could say goodbye to his dreams. A fellow tramp saw Hitler's artwork and persuaded him to paint pictures of the landscape of Vienna and sell them for profit. He even made enough money to move to a hospital where he stayed for 3 years. This is not the Adolf Hitler that we all know and fear. This version of Hitler is doing well for himself and can be regarded as an arguably admirable man. So what happened to this that turned him into such a political monster for years to come? Hitler's political views were shaped mainly by 2 major experiences: living in Vienna and serving in the Great War. Vienna was the capital of Austria-Hungary and was therefore a place of high-standing political meetings, and was an important stage for protest and strikes from trade unions. Although Hitler looked down on the ordinary workers, he admired the strength and power of the trade unions and believed that building a group of loyal and disciplined supporters would be key to his power. At the same time, he hated the ideas and ideologies of socialist and communist leaders, disregarding their claims that all humans are equal, believing that among all individuals and races, a pure, better Aryan race was to be designed and designated to rule over them all. Due to Austria-Hungary's massive size as an empire, it had a massive and diverse population. Hitler was a German speaker and looked down on all other races and countries within the empire. He wished for a single powerful state to unify all Germans in one everlasting land, with no foreigners allowed in, yet no Germans left out. Hitler's dream of a single-led German empire drew him away from many races, such as the Slavs of Eastern Europe, black people, and most of all, Jews. Hitler's obsessive-like hatred of the Jews was a result of the widely held belief of the Jewish doctrine. The Jewish population made up a twelfth of the overall population of Vienna, many of which were highly educated and able to become successful bankers, lawyers, doctors and professors, and earned a lot of money for themselves and their family. To most people, this simply showed that they were skilled and talented, but to Hitler and many others at the time, this simply upheld their Jewish doctrine. A doctrine is a policy or set of beliefs that are upheld by a large group of people. The Jewish doctrine, for an example, implemented the belief that all Jews are corrupt, using their success towards a traitor Marxist gain. This doctrine was often used to justify the events of the Holocaust. To Hitler, the success of many Jews strengthened his belief in the doctrine. To him, they acted as cunning deceivers of the ordinary people, plotting to cheat people through businesses and media, such as the newspapers they controlled. Shortly, Hitler convinced himself that every large problem from crime to poverty was a result of the Jews. In 1913, Hitler moved to Germany after crossing the Austrian border into Bavaria, where he settled in Munich. When the First World War broke out in August 1914, Hitler joined the German army in Bavaria straight away, serving as a message runner on the Western Front, where he had to run across battlefields under heavy fire, carrying and exchanging orders between officers. Over the 4 years of the war, Hitler served in over 40 battles, most notably the Battle of Ypres and the Somme. During his years of service, he continued his artistic dream by sketching cartoons for an army newspaper. By December 1914, Hitler had been awarded the Iron Cross Second Class for bravery and saving the life of his superior officer. In August 1918, he was awarded the Iron Cross First Class for his service during the Third Battle of Ypres. Although Hitler was respected and awarded by his superiors, he was never promoted above the rank of Lance Corporal, unable to command other soldiers because they did not see him as a good leader. Regardless of this, Hitler later described his role in the Great War as the greatest of all experiences. The war ended the aimlessness on Hitler's life. War gave him a purpose and a sense of community and belonging, which he had never felt before. In November 1918, the war ended with Germany's defeat. Hitler heard the news lying in a hospital bed, recovering from temporary blindness as a result of Allied mustard gas. As we covered in the last video, shortly after the German defeat, communist and right-wing uprisings took place in Berlin, and the Treaty of Versailles was signed. A quick recap of the treaty is that it stripped Germany of 13% of its land, reduced its army to 100,000 men, and reparations had to be paid to the Allies. And finally, all blame was to be put on Germany. If you're interested in the treaty and want to have a look at it in more detail, have a look at my last video where I cover all parts of the treaty and conditions of it. Hitler, as well as many others, were outraged by the public humiliation of the treaty. Hitler reasoned that Germany had been betrayed by enemies from within, rather than those on the battlefield. He argued that Germany could still fight, and all of its troubles and sacrifice caused by the armistice were at hands of the socialist SPD, communists, and most of all, the Jews. The remaining commanders of the defeated German army were afraid of a communist uprising from their soldiers. All over Germany, new political groups organised their own armed fighting force, following the confusion and anger that followed the German defeat. Hitler became one of the army's political agents, ordered to scout and report on these groups, and aid those that were against communism. Hitler's life continued like this until one fateful day. In January 1919, a man named Anton Drexler founded a right-wing political party called the German Workers' Party, or DAP. It claimed to be against both large businesses and trade unions and supported the ordinary men of the street. In September 1919, Hitler was ordered to go and overhear a DAP meeting taking place in a beer hall. Hitler was told by his superiors to remain low and undercover. However, he got involved with a heated political argument with a visitor, to the point that, impressed with Hitler's public speaking skills, Drexler invited Hitler to join the party as the 55th member. In February 1920, the DAP changed its name from the German Workers' Party to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or NSDAP, or more fondly known as the Nazi Party. Hitler had left the army to work full-time in his new position as head of party propaganda. Propaganda is iconography, media, or information that promotes a certain and usually biased view, belief, or message. A really good example of propaganda was created by Hitler. A red banner with a white circle with a swastika inside of it is one of the most recognisable iconography of the Nazis to date. On the 11th of July 1921, Hitler got in an argument with the other leaders of the Nazi Party, Drexler included. Hitler wished to be the sole leader of the party, however Drexler would not give up his position. During his time in the Nazi Party, Hitler had made a strong reputation for himself. Many supporters saw Hitler as a more powerful influence and figure than Drexler, and Hitler knew this, so threatened to leave the party, declaring he would never rejoin unless he alone was made the leader. Knowing that the support of the party would vanish with Hitler's departure, Drexler held a vote on the 29th of July, electing Hitler as the Nazi Party's supreme leader. 5 days after his victory, on the 3rd of August, Hitler founded the SA, a brown-shirted political guard that would be used to protect public speakers, attack political enemies, but most of all, they were used as a public image of the party. Members of the public could join the cause and parade through the streets, symbolising the party's strength, determination, and most of all, discipline. The man who was in charge of the SA was called Ernst Röhm. Another early member was Hermann Göring, a former World War I fighter pilot and well-decorated war hero. Göring's fame and the Nazi Party's military-like style encouraged others, particularly ex-World War I servicemen, to join the Nazi regime, as it reminded them of army life. In October of 1922, Benito Mussolini, the leader of the Italian Fascist Party, seized power by force and established himself as an Italian dictator. This proved to Hitler that disorder opened a chance for disciplined and determined organisations to take power and destroy all opposition to its rule. Hitler just had to wait for his time to strike. You may remember the money terms of the treaty from the last video, where Germany had to pay reparations or money instalments to the Allies. Germany paid her first set of instalments in 1921, but couldn't afford to pay the 1922 payment. In a protest, French and Belgian soldiers occupied the Ruhr, Germany's most industrialised area, to take its payments by force. They took away goods such as iron, steel and coal. In reaction, the Weimar government ordered a passive protest. Workers would refuse to work for the foreign invaders, and they sabotaged factories and flooded mines. The French and Belgians returned with violence, claiming the lives of many. The government continued to support the workers by printing more money to pay them with. However, due to large amounts of money now in circulation, the German treasury and the worth of the German mark decreased dramatically, with prices skyrocketing and going out of control. This got so bad to the point where the economy got to a stage where prices would double every day. This is what is known as hyperinflation. People had to carry their wages in wheelbarrows, yet prices went up so fast that a day's worth of work would be equal to a singular cup of coffee. By November 1923, bread prices went up to 201 billion marks. Many starved to death because of the high food prices, and the elderly and middle class suffered badly as their savings and pensions deteriorated. Hitler chose November 1923 to strike. He believed that the people were fed up with this situation and the government, and that they would support a strong, powerful leader. He was willing to overthrow the government in the events known as the Munich Putsch. On the morning of the 8th of November, Hitler and 600 loyal Nazis seized a beer hall in Munich, where a meeting between high-standing Bavarian leaders was taking place. At gunpoint, Hitler captured the three leaders, making them swear an oath and allegiance towards the Nazis, before locking them in a room. These men later escaped and informed the police on Hitler's plan. Hitler then spoke to his comrades, declaring the destruction of the Bavarian government and that he would lead the Nazis to march on Berlin, where they would take over the national government and establish General Ludendorff, a decorated war hero and a key supporter of the Nazis, as ruler of Germany. They got as far as the centre of Munich before being stopped by armed police, who opened fire, killing 14 Nazis, yet Hitler and Ludendorff remained untouched. Hitler's uprising had failed, although he was arrested and tried in 1924 for high treason, a crime back then punishable by death. Hitler fought his way through the courtroom, gaining public fame for his public speaking and strong views. Hitler was found guilty and sentenced to 5 years imprisonment in Landsberg prison in Bavaria, of which he only served 9 months. During his time, he was advised to write his political testament, a message to the public displaying his views for the future. He did this through his book called Mein Kampf, or My Struggle, which by the time of his death in 1945 sold over 8 million copies. Mein Kampf is a mixture of history and personal memories jumbled together with half-baked political philosophy and ideas about race. Hitler had no new ideas but kept repeating the same topics over and over again. Race is the key to history. Hitler believed that humans can be divided into separate races, which should not be allowed to interbreed and must remain pure. The blonde-hair, blue-eyed Aryan race is the most superior and is responsible for the world's accomplishments and is destined to rule over all other races, most particularly Slavs of Eastern Europe, Asians, and Africans. He thought that the Jews were the lowest race and responsible for the destruction of human achievement. Germany's destiny is to rule the world. Germans are the purest type of Aryan, destined to destroy its internal enemies, such as the Democrats, Communists, and Jews who weaken it. Germany must expand its borders to bring all Germans in and conquer the Eastern Europe to provide Lebensraum, or living space, for its new people, where they can spread the ideas of the ideal Aryan race. Hitler and Hitler alone is to make this happen. Parliaments and democracy lead to divisions and arguments. These quarrels could be all over if Germany was ruled by one strong, single leader. Hitler often suggests himself in the book as a leader, a position we all know he will eventually obtain. But how?